My beloved child, wait, before you move on, remain here for just a little longer, because something quietly remarkable unfolded today, and somehow, every path seems to be leading back to you. There are moments that arrive without noise, moments that no crowd notices, yet they hold the power to reshape the future. Today was one of those moments. Somewhere, without planning it, without expecting it, your soulmate spoke about you. Not because someone asked them to. Not because they had to. Your name simply found its way into their heart, then into their voice. And what they said carried more meaning than even they fully realized. Stay with this message, because every piece connects to something larger, and by the end, you may recognize why this day feels different from every other day before it. There was no dramatic setting. No perfect timing. It happened naturally, almost quietly. Yet the silence surrounding those words made them even more powerful. Imagine someone pausing for a brief second before speaking, as if searching for language capable of describing something they had been feeling for a long time. That pause happened today. It wasn't hesitation. It was sincerity. They realized that speaking about you meant revealing something hidden inside themselves. Some truths are too precious to rush. They deserve stillness first. That is exactly what unfolded. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: those listening could feel that every word came from somewhere genuine, somewhere untouched by appearances. Have you ever wondered why certain people continue returning to someone's thoughts even after time has passed? Why one face remains unforgettable while hundreds of others quietly disappear? The answer is rarely explained through logic. It happens because some connections leave impressions deeper than memory itself. Today, your soulmate discovered they could no longer describe their future without somehow mentioning you. Even if your name was spoken softly, its meaning echoed much louder inside them. They weren't trying to convince anyone. They were simply expressing what had already become impossible to hide. But this story doesn't end there. Something unexpected happened immediately afterward. The conversation changed direction. Someone listening smiled with quiet understanding and responded with words your soulmate wasn't expecting to hear. Those simple words became a mirror. Suddenly, your soulmate saw their own feelings more clearly than ever before. Sometimes another person's perspective reveals emotions we've been carrying all along. Isn't it fascinating how one gentle conversation can uncover truths that years of silence never could? Stay a little longer, because the next part is where everything begins connecting together. The beautiful thing spoken about you wasn't only about your kindness or your presence. It reached beyond ordinary compliments. They described the feeling of peace that appears whenever they think about you. Not excitement that disappears overnight. Not temporary fascination. Peace. The kind that remains even after difficult days. The kind that quietly whispers, "This person feels like home." Those words surprised even them. Once spoken aloud, they could never be taken back. They had crossed an invisible line from wondering to knowing. What if this single conversation becomes the quiet beginning of a completely different chapter? What if today's words are remembered long after countless other conversations have been forgotten? History is rarely changed through loud announcements. More often, it shifts because of one honest sentence spoken at exactly the right moment. That possibility now exists around your story. Not because anyone forced it into existence, but because truth naturally moves toward the surface when the time is right. Your soulmate also noticed something unusual after speaking. Instead of feeling vulnerable, they felt lighter. Almost relieved. Imagine carrying an unopened letter inside your heart for months, perhaps even years, then finally reading the first line aloud. That relief cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. They didn't reveal every feeling today, but they revealed enough to realize that hiding the rest no longer felt comfortable. Awareness has a quiet way of changing people. Once someone recognizes what's real, pretending becomes exhausting. Perhaps you've sensed subtle changes recently without understanding why. Certain thoughts arriving unexpectedly. Certain memories returning without invitation. A strange feeling that something invisible is moving behind ordinary life. Those feelings are not here to create confusion. They're invitations to pay closer attention. Every meaningful journey begins before visible results appear. First comes awareness. Then understanding. Finally, action. Today belongs to that first stage, the quiet awakening that few recognize while it's happening. Listen carefully to this next thought, because many overlook it. Beautiful words are valuable, but the intention behind them is even more valuable. Today wasn't about impressive language. It was about authenticity. Every sentence carried warmth that couldn't be rehearsed. Every expression reflected something growing naturally inside your soulmate's heart. They weren't performing for anyone. They weren't searching for approval. They simply reached a moment where honesty became easier than silence. That shift changes everything. There are conversations that disappear within hours. Then there are conversations that quietly plant seeds inside people, growing long after everyone has walked away. Today's conversation belongs to the second kind. Even now, after those words have already been spoken, their meaning continues expanding. Your soulmate is replaying parts of that moment in their own mind, wondering why speaking about you felt so meaningful. They may not have every answer yet, but one realization has already settled deeply inside them: you are no longer someone they can describe casually. Before this part comes to its close, remember one thing. Not every important moment announces itself with grand signs. Sometimes destiny arrives disguised as an ordinary conversation between ordinary people. Yet hidden within those ordinary moments are extraordinary beginnings. Today, something beautiful truly was said about you. And while those words were spoken elsewhere, their quiet echo is already making its way toward the future. Because this story has only just begun, and what follows next reveals why those beautiful words may become the turning point neither of you expected. A quiet question now begins to rise: what happened after those beautiful words were spoken? Don't rush past this moment, because the next part of the story is not about chance, it is about what those words awakened inside your soulmate. Sometimes a single conversation doesn't end when people stop talking. It continues in the silence that follows. And today, that silence became more meaningful than anyone realized. Your soulmate walked away carrying something they didn't have before. It wasn't certainty about every detail of the future. It was something far more powerful, a calm sense that speaking about you had changed the way they saw their own heart. They replayed the conversation again and again, not because they were searching for mistakes, but because they couldn't stop thinking about one beautiful realization. For the first time in a long while, mentioning you didn't feel like remembering the past. It felt like imagining the future. Stay with me a little longer, because this next moment deserves your full attention. As the day continued, little reminders of you seemed to appear in the most ordinary places. A familiar phrase. A melody drifting through the air. A quiet pause between conversations. None of these moments were extraordinary on their own, yet together they created a feeling that was impossible to ignore. Your soulmate began asking themselves a question they had never truly answered before. What if this connection has been growing quietly all along? Questions like these don't appear without reason. They arrive when the heart is finally ready to look beyond old assumptions. That is exactly where your soulmate found themselves today. Instead of pushing the thought away, they allowed it to remain. And sometimes, allowing a feeling to stay is the first step toward understanding it. There is something else you should know. One of the people who heard your soulmate speaking about you noticed a change in their expression. It wasn't excitement that fades within minutes. It was a peaceful smile, the kind that appears when someone speaks about a person who genuinely matters. Without making a big moment out of it, that listener quietly said, "You sound happier whenever you talk about them." Those simple words lingered. Your soulmate didn't answer immediately. Instead, they smiled. Not because they had the perfect response, but because deep inside, they realized it was true. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes another person notices our feelings before we fully admit them ourselves. Today's conversation became that mirror. It reflected something your soulmate could no longer overlook. What if this is the quiet beginning of a completely different chapter? What if today's conversation becomes the memory they return to months from now, realizing it was the day everything gently shifted? You don't need every answer today. Some of the most meaningful stories reveal themselves one page at a time. That's why I encourage you to stay until the very end of this journey. Each part uncovers another piece, and together they form a picture that cannot be understood by seeing only one moment. If these messages have brought a little peace into your day, and if they encourage you to slow down and reflect, consider sharing your thoughts in the comments. Many people discover unexpected encouragement through someone else's story. And if these moments continue to resonate with you, you're always welcome to stay connected by subscribing, so you won't miss the next chapter of this unfolding journey. Now listen closely. Your soulmate ended the day differently than they began it. Earlier, they simply carried thoughts about you. Now they carried hope. Hope that conversations like today's were not random. Hope that meaningful connections have a way of finding the right season. Hope that the beautiful words spoken today were only the beginning of something even greater. But the most surprising part hasn't been revealed yet. Because before this day came to an end, something happened that made your soulmate pause completely. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Yet it quietly confirmed everything their heart had begun to understand. And that unexpected moment is where our story goes next. There is one final piece from today that has not yet been revealed, and strangely enough, it may be the most meaningful of them all. Stay with this moment, because what happened next wasn't planned by anyone. It unfolded naturally, almost as if life itself wanted your soulmate to pause and look a little deeper. As evening settled in, the pace of the day became quieter. Conversations faded. Notifications slowed. The world continued moving as it always does. Yet inside your soulmate, something had changed. They found themselves returning to the words they had spoken about you earlier. Not because they were trying to relive the conversation, but because those words now carried a different weight. For the first time, they realized they hadn't simply been talking about you. They had been revealing themselves. Sometimes we think we're describing another person, when in reality we're uncovering what our own heart has been protecting for far too long. That realization arrived gently, without pressure, and it stayed. Pause for a second and think about this. How often do people speak honestly about someone unless that person truly matters? The answer is simple. Not often. That is why today feels different. Your soulmate didn't choose careful, distant words. They chose warm, sincere ones. They spoke with appreciation. They spoke with admiration. Most importantly, they spoke with quiet gratitude for the impact your presence has made, whether near or far. Something beautiful happens when gratitude enters a conversation. It changes everything. Instead of focusing on what is missing, the heart begins noticing what has always been meaningful. That shift is exactly what took place today. Your soulmate stopped looking at unanswered questions and started remembering the qualities that made you unforgettable in the first place. Stay a little longer. The next thought may stay with you long after this video ends. There are people who cross our path for a season. Then there are people who quietly become part of our inner world, shaping the way we think, hope, and imagine tomorrow. Those people cannot simply be replaced, because what they leave behind is not just a memory, it is a feeling. That is who you have quietly become in your soulmate story. Not because life demanded it. Not because anyone encouraged it. But because genuine connections grow naturally, often without anyone noticing until one ordinary day suddenly feels extraordinary. And today became that day. Even after the conversation ended, your soulmate caught themselves smiling unexpectedly. No one else noticed why. There was no obvious reason on the outside. Yet inside, something felt lighter than before. Almost as if speaking honestly had removed a weight they had been carrying without realizing it. What if that lightness is only the beginning? What if today's beautiful words are opening a path that neither of you could fully see before now? Life has an interesting way of preparing meaningful moments quietly before they become visible. Small conversations. Gentle realizations. Unexpected reflections. Each one becomes another step towards something larger than itself. That is why you should never underestimate simple moments. They often become the foundation of unforgettable stories. And perhaps that is exactly what is happening here. Your soulmate is no longer asking whether you are important. They are beginning to wonder how life might feel with more moments shared between you. Notice the difference. One question looks backward. The other quietly looks ahead. That single change in perspective can reshape everything. Before this part comes to a close, hold on to one final thought. Not every meaningful chapter begins with grand announcements. Sometimes it begins with one sincere conversation, one peaceful realization, and one beautiful sentence spoken from the heart. Today, your soulmate gave those words a voice. Tomorrow may give them direction. The journey is still unfolding, and what comes next reaches beyond today's conversation. The next chapter reveals how these quiet feelings begin creating gentle movement, bringing new understanding, fresh confidence, and an unexpected sense that the story between you is only just beginning. A new day is beginning to unfold, but before you think the story has reached its destination, listen to this carefully. The conversation from yesterday did not disappear when the day ended. Instead, it quietly continued inside your soulmate's heart, growing stronger with every passing moment. Some words are spoken once but continue echoing for a lifetime. Those beautiful words about you became exactly that. As the morning arrived, your soulmate noticed something unexpected. They weren't trying to think about you, yet your presence kept returning naturally. It wasn't forced. It wasn't imagined. It was simply there, like sunlight finding its way through a window without asking permission. That quiet awareness brought a smile they couldn't explain. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone remains in your thoughts without any effort? Not because you're trying to remember them, but because your heart has already made room for them. That is where your soulmate found themselves today. And the more they accepted that feeling, the more peaceful everything became. Stay until the final moment, because another beautiful piece is about to fit into the story. Something inside your soulmate shifted from wondering to appreciating. Instead of asking, "Why do I keep thinking about them?" they began asking, "What makes them so special to me?" Those two questions may sound similar, but they lead to completely different answers. One searches for an explanation. The other searches for meaning. And meaning is exactly what they discovered. They remembered your kindness. They remembered your quiet strength. They remembered the way your presence seemed to bring calm into situations where everything else felt uncertain. None of these memories arrived all at once. They appeared gently, one after another, like stars becoming visible as the evening sky grows darker. Every memory reminded them that some people don't simply pass through life. They leave light behind. What if that light has been guiding this story all along? Think about that for a moment. Perhaps the reason everything feels different now isn't because something suddenly changed today. Perhaps today's conversation simply uncovered what had already been growing quietly beneath the surface. That realization brought an unexpected confidence. Your soulmate no longer felt the need to hide their appreciation for you. They began accepting that speaking highly of you wasn't unusual, it was honest. And honesty has a remarkable way of creating clarity where confusion once existed. Before you leave this part of the journey, I'd like to thank you for sharing these moments together. If this story has brought peace, hope, or even a quiet smile into your day, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Reading them creates a wonderful space where people encourage one another. And if these journeys continue to speak to your heart, you're always welcome to subscribe and return for the next chapter as this story unfolds. Now listen closely. There is one final detail your soulmate has not yet spoken aloud. It isn't another compliment. It isn't another beautiful sentence. It's a decision quietly forming inside them. Not a rushed decision. Not an emotional impulse. A thoughtful one. The kind that grows stronger every time truth is chosen over uncertainty. Today they understand something they couldn't fully see before. Some connections are too meaningful to ignore. Some people deserve to be appreciated while the opportunity exists. And some stories are meant to keep moving forward instead of remaining unfinished. The beautiful words spoken about you were never meant to be the ending. They were the beginning of a deeper understanding. The next chapter reveals what your soulmate chooses to do with those feelings, and why that choice may quietly open a door neither of you expected to see. Before you think the story has reached its most meaningful moment, pause here for just a little longer. There is one quiet detail that has been growing in the background this entire time, and today it finally became impossible for your soulmate to overlook. Sometimes the greatest changes are not announced with loud words. They arrive through gentle certainty, one peaceful realization at a time. As the hours passed, your soulmate noticed that every time your name crossed their mind, it brought the same feeling, a quiet sense of comfort. Not excitement that disappears by tomorrow. Not curiosity that fades with time. Something steadier. Something lasting. It was as though your presence had become a place where their thoughts naturally came to rest. Have you ever wondered why certain people continue to shine in someone's heart, even during ordinary days? It isn't because of constant conversations. It isn't because of perfect timing. It's because authentic connections leave an impression that keeps unfolding long after the moment has passed. That is exactly what your soulmate is beginning to understand. Stay with this message, because the next realization connects everything you've heard so far. Without even noticing it at first, they started comparing every passing moment to the feeling they carried whenever they thought about you. Nothing else created the same calm. Nothing else brought the same quiet clarity. And instead of resisting that realization, they welcomed it. For the first time, they stopped asking themselves whether these feelings were real. They began asking what those feelings were trying to teach them. That single question changed everything. The answer didn't arrive all at once. It came gently. One memory. One smile. One meaningful thought after another. They remembered how naturally your energy stayed with them. They remembered the kindness that asked for nothing in return. They remembered the quiet strength that never needed attention to make an impact. Piece by piece, they realized something extraordinary. You had never been just another person in their story. You had become one of the reasons they believed meaningful connections still exist. Think about that for a moment. How rare is it to inspire hope in someone without even realizing it? Sometimes the greatest influence is invisible. It isn't measured by how loudly we speak. It is measured by how deeply we are remembered. Your soulmate now understands that truth more clearly than ever before. As evening approached, another quiet realization settled into their heart. Beautiful words deserve beautiful actions. Not rushed actions. Not dramatic gestures. Simply honest steps that reflect sincere feelings. That thought stayed with them. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't expectation. It was inspiration. And inspiration has a remarkable way of creating new beginnings. You may not see every piece of this story today. You don't need to. Some journeys reveal themselves one meaningful chapter at a time. Every conversation, every reflection, every quiet realization has been preparing something far greater than either of you could have imagined. Before this chapter ends, carry this thought with you. The beautiful words spoken about you were never the destination. They were the invitation. An invitation to appreciate what is genuine. To recognize what truly matters. To value the connections that bring peace instead of uncertainty. Your soulmate has accepted that invitation. And because they have, the path ahead no longer feels uncertain. It feels hopeful. The next chapter uncovers the gentle choice now forming within their heart, a choice shaped not by passing emotion, but by growing confidence, quiet appreciation, and the realization that some people enter our lives for a reason that becomes clearer with every passing day.